June 3, 2014. Lumiere Place Casino, St. Louis, Missouri. The gaming floor is busy, rows of slot machines flashing and chiming. At the far end, a man in a black zip-up jacket stands in front of an Aristocrat Mark VI. He plays several spins, then stops. His hand rests above the spin button. He waits. Inside his jacket pocket, a smartphone is angled toward the screen. It's transmitting a live feed thousands of miles away. The reels spin and stop. Jackpot. He shows no reaction, no smile, no sign of excitement. He presses cash out, collects the voucher, and moves on. Minutes later, he's at another machine, repeating the same routine. By the next morning, casino accountants have flagged multiple machines showing a negative hold. They've paid out more than they took in. Reviewing the footage, surveillance sees the same man hitting machine after machine, winning just enough each time to walk away ahead. They don't know his name yet or how he's doing it. But what's clear is that this isn't luck, it's a system. One that will stretch across 3 continents, take millions from the world's biggest casinos, and push regulators into a race to stop it. And on that night in St. Louis, the hunt to catch him had just begun. The story begins 5 years earlier, 2009. Russia passes a law banning almost all forms of gambling. Casinos close overnight. Thousands of slot machines are dismantled, loaded onto trucks, and sold off as scrap. One of those machines ends up in St. Petersburg, Russia. It is purchased by Murat Bliev, a former software engineer in his late 30s. He's not a gambler. He's never worked in a casino. But he is experienced in programming and electronics, and he wants to understand how the machine works. In his small apartment, Bliev takes the cabinet apart. Circuit boards are removed, chips are photographed and labeled, the game's firmware is copied onto his computer. He begins reviewing the code. It controls everything, how the reels spin, how the wins are calculated, and when jackpots are paid. What catches his attention is the PRNG, the pseudo-random number generator. On paper, a PRNG is meant to mimic randomness. In reality, it is a formula that starts with an initial seed value, then uses a set of hidden variables to produce a sequence of numbers. The sequence appears random, but it is deterministic. If you know the seed and the algorithm, you can predict the results. Bliev realizes something. If he can observe enough spins from a live machine, he can work backward to approximate its current state. From there, he can predict when a high-value payout is coming. What starts as a technical experiment becomes an ongoing project. Bliev spends months collecting spin data from the test machine, mapping the relationship between time, real positions, and payouts. The more data he collects, the more accurate his predictions become. By 2010, he shares his findings with a small group of contacts, other engineers and programmers he knows from past work. Among them are 2 men with hacking experience. Together, they begin building a tool that can process recorded spins and calculate the optimal time to press spin for maximum return. The prototype is simple. Number 1, a smartphone records several spins on a target machine. Number 2, the footage is uploaded to a server in St. Petersburg. Number 3, the algorithm analyzes the reel positions, determines the PRNG state, and sends back the timing window for the next favorable spin. The process takes minutes, but the team believes that with practice, it can be used inside real casinos without drawing attention. By late 2010, they have a functioning system. The group now has a decision to make: keep refining the technology at home or start testing it on actual casino floors. They chose the second option. By early 2011, the system was ready for a live environment. The team chooses the first targets carefully, smaller casinos in Eastern Europe using older Aristocrat Mark VI or Novomatic Coolfire slot machines. These models are common, profitable, and most importantly, use the same predictable PRNG family as Bliev's test machine. The first field operative flies into a city in the Baltics. His cover is simple: a lone tourist spending an evening in the casino. He walks the floor looking for the right game. Once he finds it, he plays a few spins normally, drawing no attention. Then the process begins. He records between 20 and 30 spins on his smartphone. The camera is angled discreetly from waist height. Each spin is captured clearly enough for the algorithm to read the reel positions. The footage is uploaded to St. Petersburg. Back in Russia, the data is processed. The program identifies the machine's current seed value and forecasts when it will produce a favorable outcome. A message is sent back to the operative. Ready in 3 spins. Press now. The first test is cautious. Low stakes, around 20 euros per spin. The results are immediate. Small wins turn into larger payouts, confirming that the algorithm is tracking the PRNG correctly. For the next several weeks, the team repeats the process in different locations. Each step is controlled. Never take more than the equivalent of $1,000 from a single machine. Leave as soon as the target win is achieved. Rotate casinos frequently. Keep all behavior consistent with a regular player. The early results showed the system worked. Wins were consistent and the predictions were accurate, but the method still had its limits. Sending recorded spins to St. Petersburg and waiting for instructions created delays. A weak connection could mean missing the exact moment to play, and in busy casinos, even a short hesitation before pressing spin could be enough to draw unwanted attention from floor staff. Even with these challenges, the profits were undeniable. In just a few months, the team had proven their approach was not only viable, but sustainable. For Bliev, that was enough to move forward. The small-scale tests in Eastern Europe had served their purpose. Now it was time to take the operation somewhere bigger. By the end of 2011, the plan was set. The syndicate would expand into 3 key markets at once: Macau, Singapore, and the United States. Each had casinos running the same vulnerable machines, but on a far larger scale, and each would require its own strategy to operate undetected. Macau was first. The scale alone made it appealing. Casino floors packed with hundreds of slot banks, many still running the older Aristocrat models their algorithm could predict. The density of machines meant a team could work several targets in one property before ever needing to leave. But the floor was crowded. Security staff walked the aisles constantly, and the pauses before pressing spin, the moment their timing was locked in, could be noticed in a busy environment. Operatives adjusted by masking the delay. They would adjust their chips, check their phone casually, or call over a cocktail server to draw attention away from the machine. Singapore was different. There were only 2 casinos in the country, Marina Bay Sands and Resorts World Sentosa, but both were heavily regulated. ID checks were standard. Locals had to pay a levy to enter, and security took an active interest in new players. The team used foreign passports to blend in with tourist traffic. Here, wins were smaller, but consistent enough to justify the trips. The United States was where they saw the biggest potential for growth. Las Vegas still had older Aristocrat Mark VI titles scattered across the Strip, not in the main high-limit rooms, but tucked into quieter corners of large properties. The team moved from Caesars to MGM Grand to the Venetian, working the less trafficked areas where they could operate without too much attention. Atlantic City followed soon after. In every market, the protocols were strict. Never spend more than 15 minutes on a machine. Never take more than the equivalent of $1,000 from a single unit. Always rotate casinos. Always act like a regular player. Order drinks, talk to staff, occasionally lose a spin or two in between target plays. The results were strong. In Las Vegas, a 4-person team could clear 6 figures in a matter of weeks without ever triggering a jackpot that might bring in a floor manager. But it wasn't perfect. The process still relied on recording the spins, sending the footage back to St. Petersburg, and waiting for instructions. That delay could be seconds, or it could be minutes, depending on the connection. And in casinos where every hesitation was noticed, waiting was risky. Poor signal meant missed opportunities, and in a few cases, visible frustration from operatives had already drawn the eye of surveillance. Bliev knew the system needed to be faster. The algorithm worked, but the window between collecting the data and acting on it had to close. And in the months ahead, the team would make the single change that would turn a profitable operation into one of the most precise cheating systems the casino industry had ever seen. In early 2012, the St. Petersburg team rebuilt their setup for real-time streaming. Instead of recording clips, operatives would now transmit every spin live through a secure, encrypted Skype connection. It changed everything. Now, as soon as the reels stopped spinning, the video feed was analyzed instantly in St. Petersburg. The algorithm read the reel positions, calculated the machine's internal state, and predicted exactly when the next high-value outcome would land. The timing cue came back in the simplest possible form: a single, discrete vibration from the phone in the operative's pocket. It was calibrated to trigger roughly 0.25 seconds before the optimal press of the spin button, allowing for human reaction time. With this change, the margin of error collapsed to almost zero. The days of awkward pauses were over. Operatives could approach a machine, play several spins, receive the signal, and walk away with a payout, all in under 5 minutes. In Las Vegas, this upgrade was transformative. A single four-person team could now take $250,000 in a week, spread across dozens of machines in multiple properties without drawing the kind of attention a single large jackpot would trigger. But the new system brought new requirements. The live feed had to be running at all times during play, and the camera had to remain steady and unobstructed. That meant no more holding a phone at the waist or on the edge of the machine, a method too obvious under constant surveillance. The solution was custom-made clothing. The team had shirts designed with mesh-lined chest pockets, allowing the phone's camera to see through the fabric. The angle was perfect, stable, hands-free, and invisible to anyone watching the floor. The operation ran with this setup for months, and the results were extraordinary. Teams rotated through Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Macau, and Singapore, each using the same method. The algorithm's predictions were precise. The payouts were consistent. The risk of being caught in the act had never been lower. But perfection came with a cost. The more they used the system, the more visible the pattern became. Casinos in multiple jurisdictions began sharing notes. Surveillance teams spotted the same type of play on the same vulnerable machines. They noticed players winning in short bursts, then moving on quickly, too quickly for it to be chance. The syndicate was winning faster than ever before. But for the first time, they weren't the only ones watching closely. By mid-2013, the syndicate's success had started leaving traces. Not on the machines, because there was no tampering, no foreign devices plugged into ports, but the traces were in the data that casinos kept. Win reports, machine logs, and player behavior records were beginning to show patterns that didn't match normal play. It began with individual security teams noticing odd similarities. A certain model of slot machine, almost always the older Aristocrat Mark VI, would be played for only a few minutes before paying out, followed by the player cashing out immediately and leaving. The wins were frequent, but never large enough to trigger a mandatory jackpot investigation, and it wasn't just happening in one casino. The Nevada Gaming Control Board started comparing notes with surveillance managers across Las Vegas. Those managers began speaking to counterparts in other states. The same small group of unidentified players kept appearing in surveillance footage from multiple jurisdictions, always on the same machines, always with the same precise pauses between spins. The breakthrough came in Louisiana. At the Coushatta Casino Resort, surveillance expert Darren Hall had been tracking irregular play on their slot floor. Reviewing archived footage, he noticed two things: the same faces showing up in different parts of the country, and the exact same body language before each winning spin. Hall began digging further. Through cooperation with other casinos, he obtained still images of the players from the security footage in Nevada, Missouri, and New Jersey. The faces matched. He then compared travel records, starting with car rental data, a tool often used in advantage play investigations. The same names kept appearing, attached to rental cars in different states within days of each other. Flight manifests filled in the rest of the timeline. The pattern revealed a coordinated travel schedule, moving from one cluster of vulnerable machines to another. One name appeared repeatedly: Murat Bliev. It wasn't just in the travel logs. His image appeared in footage from multiple casinos in multiple states, often standing in front of an Aristocrat Mark VI machine, playing for less than 15 minutes and leaving ahead. By late 2014, the picture was clear. This wasn't random. It was a coordinated operation, run by a core group of individuals using a method that was still invisible to the untrained eye, but now obvious to those who knew what to look for. Authorities decided the next step was not to block them, but to catch them in the act. That meant surveillance, tracking their travel in real time, and waiting for them to set foot on a vulnerable machine while law enforcement was ready to move. The next time Bliev came to the United States, they would be waiting. And eventually, by December 2014, after years of operating across multiple continents, Murat Bliev returns to the United States. This time, his focus is on Missouri and Illinois, two states where older Aristocrat Mark VI machines are still common on the floor. He doesn't know that law enforcement already has his name. He doesn't know that his rental car reservation has been flagged the moment it was made. And he doesn't know the agents from multiple jurisdictions are tracking his movements in real time. Bliev arrives with three of his most trusted operatives. Their schedule is the same one they've followed for years: move quickly, work in rotation, and never stay long enough to draw attention. In the days leading up to the takedown, they operate like ghosts. entering casinos, selecting targets, taking payouts, and disappearing before anyone on the floor can even remember their faces. Their chosen targets are spread between St. Louis and St. Charles in Missouri and several casinos just over the river in Illinois. Each location has multiple machines vulnerable to their algorithm, and the live stream setup is now more advanced than ever. The mesh-lined pockets, the 0.25-second vibration queue, every detail is perfected. On the evening of December 10th, Bliev walks into Hollywood Casino St. Louis. The floor is busy, filled with tourists and regulars. To anyone watching casually, he looks like a low-key player, moving from one machine to the next. He finds his target, an Aristocrat Mark VI. The phone in his pocket streams the spins live to St. Petersburg. Within seconds, the timing signal comes back. He presses spin, the reels stop, and the machine lights up with a payout. He cashes out, collects the voucher, and starts walking toward another machine. He doesn't make it there. Two men in plain clothes step into his path. "Sir, we need to speak with you." They aren't security guards. They're FBI agents. Bliev looks up, expression unreadable. He doesn't run or argue. He simply stops moving, knowing the conversation is not going to be routine. Across town, at a Maristar casino in St. Charles, another operative is surrounded by casino security. Her phone is taken, along with the cash she's carrying. In Illinois, the remaining two team members are intercepted mid-session. Their devices are seized on the spot. Within hours, all four are in custody. Inside the FBI's evidence room, the confiscated phones tell the rest of the story. The live streams, the timing signals, the exact machines targeted, it's all there. Bliev and his operatives are indicted on charges of conspiring to cheat slot machines in at least 10 U.S. casinos. Facing overwhelming evidence, they take plea deals. Bliev is sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, followed by deportation. One member cooperates, detailing the St. Petersburg operation and how profits were moved overseas. The Missouri arrests ended the U.S. operation, but the core network in St. Petersburg remained untouched. Most of the profits were already overseas, and within months, the same method appeared in casinos from Peru to Singapore. For casinos, replacing every vulnerable Aristocrat Mark VI was costly, so many casinos kept them, relying on tighter surveillance instead. Publicly, it was called an isolated case. Privately, the industry knew it could happen again anywhere those machines remained. Bliev served 2 years in federal prison before being deported. What happened to him afterward isn't known. What is certain is that the flaw he discovered has never completely disappeared. So the question remained, if the same machines are still out there, who's playing them now?